needed and will be needed in the inner man of God's people to be able to transcend and ascend the winds of darkness that we're presently facing and which we'll continue to face in the earth even more fiercely.
Rabbi Kirt Schneider, it's great to have you here on Charisma News. And this time you are in your home and you're not having air raid sirens going on behind you, interrupting our interview. And thank God that you were protected and spared during that time. And that was a bit scary for me because I didn't know what was going on. But I know, brother, you had a lot more peace than I did at that point, I think. But today we're going to be talking about what is God speaking about 2024. But in a way, kind of leading up to that, we're going to talk about something that God spoke to you in July of 2023. And so, Rabbi, welcome here to Charisma News.
Brother, God bless you, John. Always good to connect and glad to be part of the Charisma team.
Absolutely. Rabbi, like I said, you were in Jerusalem and we were doing a live, streaming live video update about what was going on. And there were air raid sirens happening. And you had to leave and go to a bomb shelter. And that happened twice during our time. And my goodness, just kind of give us a quick update of how you got out of Israel and what God has done since then.
Okay. Well, the first thing that's really interesting is I listened to my wife, Cynthia, share with the congregation that we minister at sometimes. And we were back from Israel. We were ministering in the congregation. They had all been praying for us to be able to get back safely. They held a big prayer meeting. And so when we got back, we were able to kind of share our experience. And I let Cynthia go first and share her experience. And it was really interesting and incredible to me that she was just going through the experience kind of moment by moment and all that she was feeling and the weight of it all and getting prepared to spend like 3 days in the bomb shelter because they were telling us we need to bring enough supplies here to spend 3 days in there and just kind of the stress that she was under and the oppressiveness of the situation where bombs are, being detonated over your head. So she was experiencing all that. Where me, I was kind of excited about the whole thing when it was going on. I mean, I didn't realize the devastation that it was causing and the lives that were being destroyed. I just knew, wow, Israel's being attacked and I'm here. I've been hearing about this for years and I finally get to be here when it happened. And, and I'm sharing this with my people. So, I was just kind of excited about the whole thing. Then, the situation continued to get worse, and there began to be flight problems. We were getting word that the airport was closed, and Cynthia was really feeling strongly that we needed to leave if we could. And I began to listen to her when she said to me, "This is not where you're to be right now. You are not able to help anybody here. You're not able to minister to anybody here. You need to be back in the States where you can reach people and minister to people." So when she said that to me and she felt like she was really hearing that from the Lord, I said, okay. So at that point, Cynthia was able to connect with a travel agent who was able to get us a flight out of Tel Aviv to Istanbul, which is really interesting because just a couple of days later, the Istanbul was closed to Israel. I mean, Istanbul, was a nation that's very hostile towards Israel, but we were able to get in right before that happened, flew to Istanbul, then get back to the States. But the situation really did not begin to wear on me. It didn't wear on me when I was there. It weared on me when I got back. And I had an app on my phone which was called Homefront. And so I was getting like text messages every 5, 10, 15 minutes or so. Every time a bomb was launched, every time a bomb hit, every time a bomb was detonated by the Iron Dome, every single time anything that happened, I was getting a text. So all day long, I'm getting text. And then I get home, I get on the news, I watch the YouTubes. So I was being fed with this diet of what's going on in Israel, 15 hours a day whenever I wasn't sleeping. I was just so engaged in it as a Jewish person, and being there when the war broke out, I just was so connected. But eventually I felt, John, that it was really starting to wear me down and that it wasn't healthy. So I began to disconnect. I disconnected from the app. I still pay careful attention. Of course, I'm in touch, but I can do it when I want to. I can get on, the news, 3 times a day or so, and keep up with what's going on. And of course, I still am in contact with some people that are there, that are, they're in the midst of it. But that was our experience. We were supposed to be there till actually like the end of October, but we had to cut our trip short.
Yeah. So I'm so glad that you are back here safely, and God's given you some new strategies on how to continue to be effective for the kingdom. And maybe we'll do another conversation about that at some point. But today we're talking about some prophetic things that God is speaking. And before we get into what God is saying to you about the year 2024, I want to play something that you just shared with me. It's a short. And so we're just going to play this, but this was from, I believe, July 7th that God spoke to you, and you shared this. And so we're going to play this, and then we'll talk about it.
Turn to the book of Esther. And I heard the Lord, not in my mind, but in my intuition, say to me, this is what's coming next. The world is going to start pinpointing scriptures like the one that you just read, where it says the Jews did whatever they wanted to with their enemies, and they're going to use scriptures like that to foster and booster anti-Semitism. They're going to start focusing on Jews bombing places on their borders where they're being bombed and attacked to protect themselves. But they're not going to show the Jewish people protecting themselves. The media is going to show the Jewish people bombing places to protect themselves, where children are getting hurt because you can't always, sometimes it just happens in war, and the world is going to turn against the Jews once again. The world is getting ready, beloved, for the biggest anti-Semitic attack against Jewish people that the world has ever known.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That was July 7th that you released that word. And this is what God was stirring in your heart about that point. And now we see October 7th. So that was July, August, September, October. So 4 months later, pretty much to the day, that we've seen the start of that come to pass. So let's just respond to that. I mean, you sent this to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, we have to talk about this, because there was something in your spirit that was stirring already, and now we see this. Tell me about your perspective of this word now.
What happened was, a few days before July 7th, I was sitting in my prayer room at home one morning. I was just doing my daily readings. And a lot of times I just say, Lord, is there anything in the word that you want to show me? And I just open up the word. And I open up the word, and I just turned to the book of Esther. And I looked down, I started reading the book of Esther in the 9th chapter, the 5th verse. And it says there that the Jews did whatever they wanted to do with their enemies. There was a plot to exterminate them, and the Jews responded to that by eliminating their enemy, by doing whatever they wanted to their enemy. God gave them victory over the ones that were trying to exterminate them. And as soon as I read that, it was like I just knew. That was about to happen again. People can verify this by going to my YouTube channel. Just go to Rabbi Schneider. Look at my YouTube that was released on July 7th. It's either the thumbnail or the title is called The Anchor is Gone. And about 16 minutes into that video, you can see that being prophesied, and you'll be able to see the date on that. So it was, and the reason I went into the studio to record on July 7th is because I knew that the Lord had given me a prophetic word.
Yeah.
And so to kind of break that down, there was a couple things that I just knew in my spirit. Number one, that Israel was about to be at war, and that they were going to be painted as a big, ugly bully, and that the world was going to put them in such a negative light through the media that the world would turn on them. And anti-Semitism wouldn't just be confined to one part of the world like it was during the war with them during the time of Nazi Germany, but the whole world. I said it would be a bigger anti-Semitic attack than it was during Nazi Germany. And I also prophesied that I prophesied that the way this anti-Semitic attack was going to happen is because of the media. The media was going to be showing the world the Jewish people responding to the attack that had been upon them by bombing places that had children in it. And of course, that's exactly what's happened with the hospitals and everything else. I also saw there that the result of this, once again, would be that through the media's demonic energy, that the world would turn on Jewish people once again, and it would be a worldwide anti-Semitism that would evolve from it.
And we are seeing each of those elements that you just laid out unfold right now, and that's it's interesting that this is what God spoke to you, and we're seeing this come to pass right now. But Rabbi, as we're getting ready for 2024, Israel is still at war. I mean, we're recording this in November 17th right now, so it's October, November, so it's more than a month. It's a month and 10 days at this point since that initial attack. What is God saying about this war, and what is God saying about the year 2024?
Well, to answer the question, I want to go back just a little bit. I remember
Yes,
I was at one of the studios, one of the television networks that we broadcast through has a very nice studio. I was there probably 4 years ago. And I was doing some filming with them, and during the break time, one of the executives there came back where Cynthia and I were sitting, and they just said to me, how you doing? I just started crying. And the reason I started crying was because about that time, I really started feeling the climate shifting in the spiritual atmosphere, particularly in America, but around the world. In other words, it was the beginning of when I felt the Western world was becoming unchristian, and that opportunities were being taken away from Christian voices to be able to get the word out. And I just saw doors closing. I saw some of the traditional Christian networks begin to limit the amount of Christian programming that they were doing, turning changing their programming to, show some Christian content, but to more make it general family entertainment content. I just saw the atmosphere shifting and the doors closing and people falling away from churches. I just began to feel in my heart a sadness with the fact that the world was turning away from Messiah. That although we've never been 100% Christian country for sure,
right,
it was at least based on Christian morals. And I just felt that Christian emphasis in the Western world was getting smaller and smaller. And so when he asked me how I was doing and I began to cry, it was because I was feeling that grief and that grieving in my heart as I felt the darkness beginning to move over the face of the land. So when we get to 2024 now, what am I seeing in 2024? I'm seeing the same thing. And I don't want to be a pessimist because I don't believe that we can walk with the Lord the way he wants us to be united with him in being overwhelmed or in defeat. But on the other hand, we have to face reality and we have to connect with him in the present reality, which requires more grace. The Bible says where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. And so I just feel like a greater grace is needed and will be needed in the inner man of God's people to be able to transcend and ascend the winds of darkness that we're presently facing and which will continue to face in the earth even more fiercely.